Well, greetings and welcome to episode 67 of Bible 180, 180 episodes between Genesis and Revelation. And today we're talking about Ezra. Ezra is not really well known in Old Testament stories and sermons, but Ezra is actually a very important biblical character because he leads the people of Israel out of captivity in Babylon and back to Jerusalem, where they start the work of rebuilding the temple. Um, Now, we have been talking about the division of the kingdoms, northern, southern kingdom of Judah and Benjamin remained faithful, while the 10 northern tribes disappeared. The 10 lost tribes of Israel, they assimilated into the pagan culture around them. Judah and Benjamin, the small tribes outside of Jerusalem, were led in 587 BC by wicked King Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed the temple. For 70 years, they were in captivity in Babylon, Babylonian captivity, exile of the Jews, a deportation, all of that. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Jonah, that we'll talk about next episode or two, Daniel, Haggai, and Ezra all had their prophetic time during the time of the exile, of the Babylonian captivity, which lasted for 70 years. So Ezra started leading the people of Israel back to Jerusalem as the Babylonian captivity came to a close. And at first, goodness sakes, they set themselves right off to the rebuilding of the temple. Remember, they had been in Babylon in captivity for 3 generations, and the temple had been destroyed. Remember, during the time of Daniel, the heart of Darius the king was warmed toward the people of Israel because of Daniel's ministry there. And remember how the king Cyrus sent a note out to the whole Babylonian empire that they should turn to God, and they started rebuilding the temple of Jerusalem. The heads of the families of Judah and Benjamin, the priests of Levites, they all got their hearts stirred, and they went back to Jerusalem from the Babylonian captivity with pieces of gold and silver and animals and valuable gifts, all that the wicked King Nebuchadnezzar had stolen from them generations before. And it was an awesome time when Ezra started bringing the people back. God turned the heart of King Cyrus of Babylonia toward the Jews, and God promoted the king. God prompted the king not only to give permission for the people to return home, but also gave them resources and money and material to rebuild the temple at Jerusalem. So in 583 BC, the first wave of God's people started the 900-mile trek back to Jerusalem. And God's big thing, the temple, became their big thing, and they rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Now, again, a little more context. The Jewish people returned to Jerusalem from Babylon to rebuild the temple in 3 waves. The first wave lasted for about 23 years in the rebuilding of the temple, and Ezra led the second wave 60 years later, about 458 BC. And Nehemiah led the third wave of people back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. We'll talk about that in an episode or two. Zerubbabel, I love that name, brought the first wave back, and they started on their task of rebuilding the temple. So Zerubbabel and Ezra begin the return back to Jerusalem. In Ezra chapter 3, they start rebuilding the temple with one mind and of one accord, all together in one place. Despite their fear of the people around them, they started rebuilding the temple, working first on the foundations and the floor, so that then they could rebuild the altar and start offering sacrifices to God. Dissenters from the outside came in to infiltrate them and started to try to stop them from rebuilding the temple. But man, oh man, they were focused on their task. They made God's big thing their big thing. They made God's first priority their first priority. All was going well. It was all good. It was all good. Life was good. Life was very good for the first wave of people who came out of captivity in Babylon and returned to Jerusalem and started to build a temple. It was good, but then something happened. Not slowly, not right away, but slowly things changed, little by little. They lost their passion for rebuilding the temple. They lost their focus, and little by little, they started to put more energy into their own projects and needs and less on the things of God. Maybe they just got tired of all the hard work of stacking stones. Maybe they just grew weary of the constant bickering and criticism from the outside. Maybe they just got sidetracked by their own wants and desires, their own personal business, their farms, their homes, their kids, their soccer games. All of them started to demand more and more attention, so they started spending less and less time with the things of God. And at first, the first wave of returnees worked hard. I mean, they worked 6 days a week and didn't mind their calloused hands and strained backs. But, you know, as time went on, as the months went on, they started working 5 days a week at the temple, and then 4, and then 2, and then 1, and after 10 years, hardly anyone was working on the temple. And for 16 years, during the time of Ezra, the temple remained untouched. Weeds and grass started to grow over the base of the temple. Wooden platforms that they had built started weathering in the sun. Soon it started looking like a project that had begun, but then started to fall into ruins and got abandoned. Soon the other nations started looking at the abandoned temple, and they knew that the people of God had started building a temple, but they must not take God very seriously. Soon, the children of the once faithful Jews who had returned to Jerusalem, who put such excitement into rebuilding the temple, soon the children of those people started thinking, well, if mom and dad don't care much about God, then why should I? Soon the temple was just a bad memory that showed them how far they had drifted from God. They had made God's big thing their little thing. And while God's house was languishing, their own businesses and houses were flourishing. They were remodeling their homes. They were putting pergo down on the floor. They were changing the old olive green kitchen wallpaper into the much more modern macadamia color. They were getting fenced-in hot tubs. They were getting house cleaners and Roombas and lawnmowers. In their own homes, things were going well, but in God's house, things were just falling apart. For 16 years, the temple went untouched by the people. Haggai is also a prophet during this time of Ezra. Haggai says these words. Haggai says on behalf of God, "Is this a time for you yourselves to be living in paneled houses while God's house remains a ruin? You have planted much, but you have harvested little. You eat, but you never have enough. You drink, but you never have your fill. You put on clothes, but you are never warm. You earn wages only to put them in a purse with holes in it." Youch, youch. That hit home. They had got distracted. They put God on the back burner. They started to do what we do when we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even like. They got distracted and they wandered away from what should have been important to them. That's what happens with us. When we get distracted, when we put God on the back burner. Has that ever happened to you at all? Has there been a time in your life when you're maybe making more money than you ever have before, but you still don't have enough and you feel there's something missing? There should be more about life because you've forgotten about God? Do you ever feel you have a God-sized hole in your heart? You have great success in your career, but it leaves you falling flat, feeling flat, thinking there must be more to life than just success in a career? Many of those times in life happen to us, and we get distracted. There are feelings of futility, feelings like you're missing out on a deeper meaning in life. Maybe that's God knocking on the door of your heart, wanting to get your attention, because God says through Haggai, God says this: give careful thought to your ways. Go up to the mountain and bring down timber and build my house so that I may take pleasure in it and be honored. But then God adds a consequence. If their spiritual lethargy causes them to misplace the priorities of building the temple, then God will, God says, bring a drought on the fields and the grain and everything on the ground produces, and people on livestock and all the labor of your hands. God sends consequences because they had so ignored their work on the temple of God, which for them was the very presence of God, and they just turned away because for them it wasn't important anymore. It was kind of a gradual slide that happens to so many people. People drift. I think one of the biggest issues today is spiritual drift. Not a quick decision that you're going to all of a sudden turn against God, but just a slow drifting, turning away little bit at a time, little bit at a time. Instead of waking up and saying, "Good morning, Lord," we wake up and say, "Good Lord, it's morning." We get into a pattern where we just ignore those things that are truly important in life. And maybe besides waking up each day and saying, "It's going to be a great day," maybe wake up and say, "God, I want to get you more, get to know you more, and love you more this day. And if this day ends, and if I've gotten to know you and love you more, then this day will be one of significance." Pray maybe in the morning after it's going to be a great day to say, "God, let me get to know you more," because getting to know you more is what it means to truly have a life of significance. Keep up the good work. Keep listening. Keep making it a great day. Remember to smile and remember to live with an attitude of gratitude for all of God's good gifts. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode, and until then, just make it a great day. Bye-bye.